All right, so we're diving deep into Exodus, specifically chapter 20.
Okay.
And it's interesting because on the surface, it seems like it's just a list of rules, right? The Ten Commandments. But you shared an online Bible study called Exodus chapter 20, Opportunity Lost.
Right.
And it frames it in a really intriguing way.
Yeah, what's fascinating about this study from My Christian Space
Mm.
is that they go verse by verse unpacking the chapter.
Yeah.
And they sort of suggest that it's not just about the rules themselves, but about a missed opportunity for a deeper relationship with God.
Yeah, that's what really caught my attention, too.
Yeah.
But let's unpack this together and see what we can uncover.
Okay.
The chapter kicks off with a really powerful statement. I am Adonai, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the abode of slavery.
Right.
It's like, boom, right from the start, a reminder of what's really important.
It's almost like setting this stage, right? It's not about you earning your freedom or proving yourself worthy. The freedom is already there. It's a gift. The commandments that follow are a response to that freedom, not a prerequisite for it.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this opportunity lost idea comes into play. So if they're already free, then what's the point of the rules? What were they missing?
That's the key question. Think about it this way. Imagine someone rescues you from a burning building. You wouldn't just stand there and say, okay, what now?
Yeah.
You'd be filled with gratitude and eager to follow their instructions because they just saved your life.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's about trust and a desire to live in a way that honors the one who rescued you.
Exactly.
So that takes us to the heart of the matter. And the study is arguing that the Israelites missed an opportunity to respond to God's grace with that kind of deep trust and gratitude.
Right.
And that leads us to the next big idea in chapter 20, idolatry. But the study doesn't just stop at don't worship statues. It goes deeper. It's about anything we put before God in our lives.
Think about our modern world.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that people tend to idolize? Maybe it's money, success, their careers, social media, even relationships.
Right.
Anything can become an idol if it takes the place of God as the center of our lives.
It's like we're constantly bombarded with messages about what will make us happy, what will bring us fulfillment.
Yeah.
But the study reminds us that true fulfillment can only be found in a right relationship with God.
And that brings us to a really powerful concept that they highlight, the impact of our choices across generations. Sin is described as a kind of hatred toward God that can be passed down. But obedience, loving God, and following his commands is described as having an even stronger impact, rippling out to 1,000 generations.
Wow, 1,000 generations.
Right,
It
we
really makes you think about the weight of our decisions.
Yeah.
It's not just about us, it's about the legacy we leave behind.
It really challenges us to consider the long-term consequences of our actions, both positive and negative.
Yep.
And it emphasizes that choosing to live in alignment with God's will has a far-reaching impact, far beyond what we can even imagine.
Okay, so we've got freedom as a gift, idolatry as a distraction from true fulfillment, and the generational impact of our choices.
Right.
What comes next in this opportunity lost narrative?
Well, next they dive into the concept of the Sabbath. And again, it's about so much more than just taking a day off. It's presented as a tangible way to demonstrate that God is the priority in our lives. In fact, the head of the household was even responsible for making sure everyone under their care honored the Sabbath, even their servants and their livestock.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like this radical commitment to setting aside time for God, putting everything else on hold, and it goes against everything our culture tells us about productivity and achievement. I mean, taking a whole day off every week, that's a tough sell in today's world.
It is. But that's precisely why the study calls it a missed opportunity. Imagine the impact it would have on our lives and on the world if we actually lived this out. What if we truly prioritize our relationship with God above everything else, even for just one day a week?
It's a challenging thought, but it definitely makes you pause and reflect.
Yeah.
So what comes after the Sabbath in chapter 20? Ready to keep digging into this opportunity lost theme?
Well, from the Sabbath, the study shifts to something a little more personal. Honoring your parents. And again, they offer an interpretation that goes beyond just blind obedience.
Oh, okay. This is one that's always kind of puzzled me. What's the deeper meaning there?
The study connects honoring parents to reflecting God's goodness and character within our families. It's about creating a space where love, respect, and those values that reflect God's heart are lived out.
So it's not just about keeping your room clean and doing your chores.
Not exactly. It's about recognizing the authority and the wisdom of our parents and treating them with the same kind of honor and respect that we would show to God.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. And the study also points out that when families reflect God's goodness, it actually strengthens the nation as a whole.
Right. It's this ripple effect moving outward from the individual to the family and then to the community.
Wow.
But on the flip side, the study suggests that disobedience and dishonor within families leads to a weakening of the nation, even exile.
Wow, that's a powerful connection. It really highlights how important healthy family relationships are, not just for individuals, but for society as a whole.
Yeah, it's about creating a foundation of strong families that can then support a strong nation.
Exactly. And from there, the study moves on to another set of commandments that we often hear, those about loving your neighbor.
Right.
And as you might expect, they go beyond just don't be mean.
Right.
So we're talking about murder, adultery, stealing, lying. These are pretty heavy topics.
They are. But the study suggests that they're all ultimately about how we treat others. It's about recognizing the inherent dignity and worth of every person created in the image of God and treating them accordingly.
It's about extending the same love and respect that we want to receive ourselves. I mean, it's easy to say don't murder, but what about all the ways we can subtly devalue or disrespect others in our everyday interactions?
That's an excellent point. The study really challenges us to think about those everyday actions, the seemingly small things that can actually have a huge impact on our relationships and on the world around us.
And then there's this idea of coveting, which I've always found particularly interesting. The study makes a really clear distinction between wanting good things and wanting them at the expense of someone else.
Right. It's not wrong to want a nice house or a successful career. But it becomes a problem when our desire turns into envy or resentment towards those who have what we want.
It's like the difference between admiring your friend's new car and secretly wishing they'd get into an accident so you could have it for yourself.
Exactly. Coveting is about letting our desires control us to the point that we're willing to harm others to get what we want.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the individual to the family to the community. But it feels like we're building up to something. What's the climax of this opportunity lost narrative?
Well, the study really zeroes in on the moment when God appears on Mount Sinai. Remember, the Israelites had just escaped slavery. They've experienced miracle after miracle. And now they're face to face with the God who rescued them.
You'd think they'd be ecstatic, right? Ready to jump in with both feet and embrace this incredible relationship.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
But instead, what happens? They're terrified, absolutely petrified.
Because he's so powerful, so different from anything they've ever experienced before.
Exactly. The study describes them as being overwhelmed by his holiness, by the sheer magnitude of who God is. And so they beg Moses to be their intermediary. They say, you speak to God for us, we're too afraid.
It's almost heartbreaking, isn't it? They had this incredible opportunity to experience a direct personal relationship with God, but their fear held them back.
And that, according to the study, is the heart of the missed opportunity. They chose distance and fear over intimacy and transformation. They settled for a relationship mediated by rules and rituals instead of embracing the fullness of God's presence.
Which takes us to the last piece of the puzzle. The altar. God instructs the Israelites to build an altar for sacrifices, and the study emphasizes that this represents a lesser form of worship. Not bad, but not what God intended.
Right. It's presented as a concession to their fear, a way to relate to God from a distance rather than experiencing the intimacy he desired for them.
So the question becomes, what does this mean for us today? Are we making the same mistake? Are we settling for a distant, rule-based relationship with God out of fear? Or are we willing to step into the fullness of his presence, even if it feels a little scary?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's one that each of us has to grapple with. But thankfully, this study doesn't leave us hanging. It offers some clues about what this greater worship, the one that the Israelites missed out on, might actually look like.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are those clues? What does it mean to move beyond the altar and experience that deeper connection with God?
Well, for one thing, it's about recognizing that simply following the rules isn't enough. The Israelites got so caught up in the letter of the law that they missed the heart of it, the invitation to a deep personal relationship with God.
So it's not about ditching the rules altogether, but about understanding their purpose. They're meant to guide us toward a more fulfilling relationship with God, not to be a barrier to it.
Precisely. Think of them like a map. The map can show you the way, but you still have to choose to take the journey.
And that journey, as we've seen with the Israelites, involves facing our fears. We have to be willing to step out of our comfort zones, to embrace the unknown, to allow ourselves to be transformed by God's presence.
And that transformation might not always be comfortable, might challenge us, stretch us, even break us at times. But ultimately, It's a journey worth taking.
So how do we even begin? How do we take those first steps towards this greater worship? What does that look like practically?
That's the beauty of it. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. It's about finding what resonates with your soul, what helps you connect with God in a real and authentic way.
So it's kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure with God.
Exactly. And there are countless paths to explore. For some people, it might be through prayer or meditation. For others, it might be through music, art, or spending time in nature.
Earlier, we talked about the Sabbath and how it's about so much more than just taking a day off. What if embracing this greater worship meant being intentional about how we spend that time? Not just resting physically, but creating space to connect with God on a deeper level.
I love that. It's about making that time sacred, setting it apart for something more than just catching up on sleep or chores. Maybe it's reading scripture, journaling, or simply sitting in silence and listening for God's voice.
And it doesn't have to be limited to just one day a week, right? It's about cultivating that awareness of God's presence in every aspect of our lives.
We also talked about how the Israelites focused so much on the letter of the law that they missed the heart of it. It's easy to fall into that trap today, too. We can get so caught up in checking off the boxes, going to church, reading our Bibles, doing good deeds, that we forget about cultivating a genuine heart connection with God.
So maybe greater worship is less about doing all the right things and more about being in right relationship with God, allowing His love to flow through us and transform us from the inside out.
Exactly. And that transformation will naturally spill over into every area of our lives. How we treat our families, how we interact with our communities, how we approach our work becomes less about following rules and more about reflecting God's love in all that we do.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. We started with what seemed like a simple list of rules, and we've uncovered so much depth and meaning. As we wrap up our deep dive into Exodus chapter 20, I want to encourage you, dear listener, to keep exploring. Keep asking questions. Keep seeking that deeper connection with God.
Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone and try new things. God is waiting to meet you in ways you never imagined possible.
And remember, you are not alone on this journey. God is with you every step of the way, ready to guide you, strengthen you, and reveal Himself to you in ever more profound ways. So keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into the heart of God.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration